Hi, I'm Betsy Barbieux, and this is CAM Matters. Come join us today as I introduce you to Denise Dalton, my manager who started back in May. Thank you, Lord, for Denise. You'll meet her and get to hear about our first budget meeting of the season and what went wrong and what could go right with it.
Welcome to CAM Matters, Condos, Co-ops, HOAs, and beyond. Betsy Barbieux is an informational leader in Florida on community association living, rights, and obligations. She is an expert on the rights and obligations of owners as well as the association. If you live or are planning to live in the state of Florida, there's a good chance you'll be part of a community association. And by the end of this show, you'll know a little bit more about community associations and why they matter.
Hi, I'm Betsy Barbieux, and this is CAM Matters. I have with me today Denise Dalton, bless her heart, in a nice way.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. She came to be my manager almost 6 months ago. So before we talk about other things that we want to talk about today, I thought I'd let her introduce herself for just a minute, and then she'll tell you about the first budget meeting we scheduled for the season.
A lot of fun. Yes, yes. Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you.
Thank you. And I'm learning a lot every single day. But we did have an exciting adventure with our first budget meeting.
Yeah, we have 10 scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you that if we get through this one, the others will be easy.
Yes. Yeah. That was putting it a little mildly, I think, though.
Did I underplay that?
You did, just a little bit, but it was good. You handled it very well, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
and not to keep you in suspense or anything, but our board members gathered. We knew it was going to be a lot of arguing and things. We knew the owners were going to come in. It was here at the office, and we knew the owners were going to come in. They weren't going to be happy with being seated back over here, and the board was seated around the table with me and Denise sitting there, so that we could do our business. And we're just getting ready to call the meeting to order.
Yes.
And this man, who I didn't know, just comes up to the table, and this is and he just starts yelling. And he goes, "This budget meeting will not open. This current board of directors is to cease and desist immediately. We the people recall this board of directors." And I'm saying, well, I'm not saying, I think I'm probably yelling.
No, you were pretty calm.
Sit down. This is not
the way
this is to work. This is not the way this goes.
Right.
Sit down. And then people start, and
Excited.
so here we are at 10 o'clock trying to call the meeting to order. And I told him, I said, if you don't calm down or if you don't leave, I will call the police.
Yes.
So I walk right over and pick up the phone, and I throw up my hand and go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 911.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and it kind of ended with a much older gentleman with a cane in my face, with his cane, and I had 911 on the phone, and I said, "Do not touch me with that cane. Do not touch me. I'm telling you, don't touch me." And 911's still on the phone. She said, "I'm not going to let you go until the police get there." So anyway, by the time the police got here, all the unruly ones were gone. We had 2 sweet ladies that stayed.
Yes, 2 owners that stayed, yes. Yeah. So it seems like there's a lot of confusion with homeowners and the budget process, why they're being assessed, what they're being assessed, and also why are they not sitting at the table with the board.
Yeah.
And also just their general frustrations wanting to recall a board member or all of the board.
All of the board.
There's a certain procedure in which that's supposed to happen according to the Florida statutes. So maybe you can touch on a little bit of those things, like how should it go according
How
to
should
Florida,
it have gone?
Yeah, Florida statute tells people, owners,
Mm-hmm.
how they're supposed to recall a board member or board members. What does that look like?
Well, because there were two things that were going on. We were trying to do a budget meeting.
Yes.
And then they were wanting to do a recall. So let's talk about the budget meeting for just a second,
Okay.
because I have finally figured out, with the help of my husband, why owners are so violent about budget meetings and why there is such a misunderstanding. And granted, it's something that you said earlier, that when you're dipping into people's pocketbooks,
Right.
it gets personal.
It does,
But
yeah.
the board has pocketbooks too.
That's right.
The board is not raising the assessments to stick it to the people.
Right. There's bills to pay.
I mean, there are bills to pay. So here's how budget's supposed to work. And then precede that with, I've already talked to you enough about meetings in past shows. You know that the board sits around a table, and they need to face each other because it's their board meeting. Nowhere else in the business, social, civic, corporate world of meetings and boards do owners or members or shareholders or stakeholders of those groups get to come to a board meeting.
Right.
Think about it. Nowhere else in the business world, whether it's social, civic, professional, corporate, do the stakeholders of those groups come to a board meeting.
Right.
So the fact that owners can come to a board meeting is weird. It's really weird. And I have an article that I wrote for the Journal several years ago called A Layman's Look at Fiduciary Duty, and explains all of that. And we can talk about that later, but probably not time today.
Right.
But to begin with, the board does need to sit around facing each other, which means the owners are going to be looking at some people's backs.
And they get offended by
and
that somehow.
That's apparently very offensive, but it was mine and your backs,
Right.
not the board members. So they could see the board members. They don't need to see us,
Right.
but I need to be able to interact with the board members at the table.
Correct.
The other thing that's a misunderstanding, in the regular business world, even a nonprofit world, social civic, you start developing a budget with your top line. And you do market analysis, you do historical comparisons, you do projections, if you're a charitable organization or a church, you pray and ask God or ask your marketing people, what do you think our income will be this year?
Right.
And so you start with the top line, and then you try to fit your expenses into a top line that you have no clue if you're going to get it or not.
Right.
In community associations, we can't develop a budget that way.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite. And once people kind of understand that, it should make more sense, because we develop the budget first by doing the expenses. And we're doing proposals, getting bids and all kinds of things, checking historical, adding inflation. You know, we're trying to get good expenses laid out for our communities. And then whatever that bottom line is, now hear me, whatever that bottom line is the income that will come in from the owners.
That's what dictates the assessment.
That's what dictates the assessment.
Right.
You don't start with, we're not going to ever change it, it's going to stay the same. And then try to fit things in, because by this time next year, you'll be out of money.
Right.
You'll absolutely.
And then there's a special
And then there's a
assessment, and then
special
they're upset
assessment.
about that. Yeah.
So we do it the exact opposite budget development than the regular business, social, civic, charitable world. And in that we start with our expenses, and whatever that amount is, we put it back up at the top, and that becomes our assessment amount that's brought in from the owners. Now, if you have some other income, if you have interest income coming in, or if you have some overage from last year, you can add that back in, and it reduces the amount due from the owners. But owners have promised to pay in advance. As soon as you sign the dotted line to buy your home or your unit, you have agreed in advance to pay whatever it takes, whatever that top line is.
That's right.
You'll pay your share of it.
That's right.
And I just don't think
They get that.
no. And boards don't understand the budget development process either.
True, a lot of times.
In that
Yeah.
you've got to start on the expense side and
That's
then
right.
go to the income side.
Right. And a lot of times board members live in the community where they're serving, and they don't want to have enemies.
Their neighbors.
They're upset with them or
Yeah,
whatever. And
yeah.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but there's a job to do too. I think the sad part about the situation with the meeting that happened where you had to call the police, had they stayed and listened through that process, I think it would have made a big difference.
The two ladies who stayed, and mind you, it took a few minutes for us to compose ourselves.
Right.
It's like, well, they
a bit
didn't really
shocking.
recall you. They didn't follow the statutory procedure, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
They didn't follow that. And obviously, this isn't going to go well, and what do we do? So it took a few minutes for us to catch our breath.
It did, and regroup.
And regroup. Do we continue? Do we leave? Do we quit? What do we do? And so there was one board member that left and went with the angry group, and that left us with 3. And I said, well, you've got a quorum, because we hadn't actually called the meeting to order yet. I was just getting ready to look at the president and say, go ahead and call it to order, when this man stormed and started reading this.
Yeah.
But if they had stayed and listened to the process, because the board worked really, really hard.
They did good.
To come up with solutions for, it was going to be a significant increase. They talked about which is better, which will have the least impact on our owners. Will increasing it and just leaving a monthly increase, or should we just leave the assessment the same and do a special assessment?
Right. They were really trying to
they
sort it
tried
out.
really, really hard.
And the owners didn't get to see that.
No.
A lot of the owners didn't.
So anyway, that didn't go well for the beginning of that meeting. But I told you that we've had 3 or 4 budget meetings with other communities since, and they've gone
very well.
Very, very nice.
Yes.
Very nice. They've done a really good job. And just for all of you out there, we're almost, for all of our communities, the boards are choosing to have to do a special assessment to fund the deficit. It's just the way things are.
Right.
And I think we're going to take a break right here, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Yes.
Are you ready for a new career? Do you have skills or interest in management, real estate, construction, maintenance, accounting, strategic planning, project management, budgets, human resource management, lawn and landscaping, pool services, or any other expertise needed to operate a community association? If you do, community association management could be for you. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Florida Community Association Management continues to grow. Career opportunities abound.
Welcome back to CAM Matters. We were just talking about Denise's first budget meeting with me. She's had them before in her other jobs, but not like this.
Not like this one.
Yeah.
This was the first one that went down like that, so it was a bit interesting. But there's always a lesson to learn. And you've been trying to work with a few people in the community to try to explain, what went wrong, how it would work for them if they did want to do the recall process.
Right. If they want to recall, then they need to do it the right way.
That's right.
And
it's not that the board wouldn't step down.
No, the board would step down, and I would, because I think the main thing is they just want to fire me. They want to terminate my contract, and they can't do it as long as this board stays in place.
Right. So they want to get rid of everybody.
They got to get rid of the board to get rid of me.
But there is a process to do that.
Yeah.
So,
And the process they followed. This is what happens when you read bits and pieces of your documents and you don't know what you're reading.
Right.
And actually, I think that anger has blinded them.
Yeah.
I mean, they are so blinded with anger that even if they read the right thing,
Right.
I mean, there is a statutory procedure for recalling a board member, and it's actually very nicely laid out in the Division of Condominiums website. And it doesn't take an attorney to do. It doesn't take a learned experienced CAM to read through here and understand. It's laid out very well. And in talking with the Division of Condominiums, with that oversees recall for condos, co-ops, and HOAs, in talking with them, they strongly suggest that you not do a recall at an open meeting, membership meeting. And I could imagine you'd have to call the police at that.
Right.
But they strongly recommend, and so the outline to follow is for a written agreement to recall. And they've created a handy dandy little form,
Pretty simple.
real simple, that you have to get all of the owners to sign to vote to recall certain board members and then to elect new ones in their place. It's
Right.
easy to do. You have a unit owner representative that go around the neighborhood, get people to sign. They notarize, certify, and notarize the results, send it by certified mail to the office of the association. The current board then has to have a special meeting to either accept or reject the recall documents. I think it's within 5 days, and if they reject it, then I believe there's another maybe 14 days to petition for arbitration. So there's a process.
It's spelled out.
Spelled out. I thought the handy dandy little form was nice, and I have provided all of this information to the unhappy group,
Right.
and I understand they trashed it.
I heard that.
So I'm giving you a bullet to shoot us with. I mean, here's how you do it, and as far as I'm concerned, if this board does not receive the proper documentation,
They're not done.
they're not recalled.
still board members,
And the thing
yes.
is the elections are in March. All they
Right.
have to do is wait.
Right.
These board members aren't going to run again.
No.
So all I have to do is wait, but they want to get rid of me sooner. So it doesn't matter. But it brings me to a topic or a phrase that has been running through my head for a couple of months now. You know what I'm going to say?
Rule of law.
Rule of law.
You've written an article,
I did.
and
I
it's
did.
in the Florida Journal
Yeah.
magazine for November.
For November. This will be the
November issue.
November article, Rule of Law. And I'm hearing this word on the news.
Yes.
I watch national news all the time, so I hear this, we're a country of rule of law. And I got to thinking about that, and I'm thinking, rule of law as opposed to rule of man,
Right.
like a king.
Right.
And then I got to looking and researching a little bit, and you'll see some of this in the article. It went back, I didn't go back any further, but I went back as far as the Mayflower Compact. And before the Pilgrims got off the boat, they said, we're leaving a king where we
Right.
had rule of king, rule of a monarch, rule of a king, kind of like dictatorial rule. We're leaving that, but we need a form of government. We need an agreement of how we're going to
Some
act.
type of structure.
Yeah, how we're going to act, how we're going to govern ourselves as soon as we set foot on land. So they came up with the Mayflower Compact. This is how we're going to live and behave. They voluntarily agreed to that.
Yes.
Then I got to looking a little bit more, and there was a brief time where the Magna Carta had a similar kind of effect, but it was short-lived. It didn't live very long. But the idea there was the king did not have any extra special powers, didn't have any extra special, he wasn't relieved of the laws. Whatever laws he made for the people, he had to go by. Didn't last very long. But then you move forward to the U.S. Constitution. And the Federalist Papers, when you read through all of those and you read through all the meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings and considerations of how will this new country govern itself, and then they voluntarily agreed to the Declaration of Independence and eventually several years later, the U.S. Constitution. This rule of law, I went on and narrowed it down even further and said, that's what our documents are.
Right.
Our declaration,
right,
and bylaws and articles are governance by rule of law.
Yes.
Just like the people who created the United States said, this is the way we're going to govern ourselves. And you know what, Denise? It's voluntary compliance.
Right.
We live in a United States where it is expected that everybody voluntarily complies.
Yes.
Well, you know what?
They don't.
They don't. So then we have court systems and things like that.
Right.
But you know what else? That's exactly the expectation in our community associations.
That's right.
When you sign on the dotted line and buy your unit or your home, you have voluntarily agreed to comply to our rules.
That's right.
Which is your declaration, your articles, and your bylaws. Mm-hmm. No one held a gun to your head to make you move in, so you have voluntarily agreed to this set of restrictions and responsibilities of how we're going to live in this neighborhood. And if you think about it even more, obviously, I don't sleep or something, I don't know, but I think of all these things. But we operate by rule of law when we drive.
Yes.
We sign a little Florida driver's we read it and sign our little driver's license, and we agree to the laws of the state of Florida for driving. Mm-hmm. You stay on your side and you stay on your side, and if you want to turn, you put your blinker on.
That's right.
I mean, if you think about the things that we do, it all is either a little microcosm or big one of rule of law. But we have people who just can't voluntarily comply.
No.
And that is basically what happened at that budget meeting.
Yes.
We had a smaller group of people who wanted to comply, and then we had a larger group of people who didn't want to comply. Mm-hmm. And the larger group is still trying to recall the current board, and they're still doing it wrong. Yeah, and right. I gave them the papers to do it right. Yes. And they won't do it right because I gave them the papers. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be sad for this community.
It is. It's really sad.
They want to self-govern, which they may, and it's not going to go well for them.
No, unfortunately.
So I think the moral of the story is your documents drive the behavior and the procedures for your community, and you have voluntarily agreed to them when you move in or when you sign your papers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you have more questions about any of the things that we've talked about, you can call and talk with me or Denise, or I think our website is at the bottom of the screen, floridacamschools.com. So please come join us for another show next month, and we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to CAM Matters. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. For more information, feel free to email Betsy at betsy@floridacamschools.com or visit the Florida Cam Schools website at www.floridacamschools.com. Information provided on this show is general in nature and does not constitute legal advice. Please contact a licensed attorney for your specific situation.